is the general attitude of people of big European parties? I'm thinking specifically of Warehouse Project and, you know, things like Boiler Room come in here. What do people think about that? Both people in the scene, because obviously there's an audience for it because they're selling tickets. But I mean, I can see them look on your face that you're not necessarily too enamored with this.
So, I mean, yeah, I have to like, walk on eggshells here. No, but I mean, I also need to be really honest, like, you know, for the sake of like myself. But yeah, so I think the thing with Boiler Room and stuff like that coming in was that when it came down here, it was amazing. Because, you know, there was...
When did it first arrive?
The first one that came through, I think, was... now I think it must be at least 10 years ago, if I'm not wrong. Because I remember going to one of the first few in New Delhi. So I think about a decade ago. And it was really nice because like some of my friends were playing and it was probably, you know, like their best gigs with the kind of energy around it and, you know, how well everything is documented, their format, you know. We felt like there was like a light being kind of, you know, shine and light.
And they would always book a certain number of locals. Was it all locals? Or
was a lot of locals, actually. Yeah. Which was really nice to see. And I feel that's awesome because, you know, it's good to explore what's really happening here. And we have amazing artists, like I was saying earlier. But over time, things have changed a lot. And now I feel like a Boiler Room could sell out like maybe 5,000, 6,000 tickets, depending on how big the venue is. But they may not even know who's playing. So what happens is that the brand becomes a lot larger than the artist or the music, you know. And I feel that's a bit dangerous sometimes because like people are just going out and you're like, okay, so how was your night last night? That Boiler Room was great. So which set did you like? Like what? You know, and I'm not saying everyone, don't quote me on this, but I'm just saying like there is this community that's come up as well, you know, so like that's...
I mean, it's a hype thing, right?
Yeah.
Amongst people who are not necessarily music people, right? People want to go, exactly as you say, like people want to go because they want to, you know, maybe even catch a glimpse into themselves on the thing, you know. I mean, that whole thing, God, I mean, as soon as it became clear, so I played quite a few, I played a few times in the very, very early years of Boiler Room when it was still at like Corsica Studios and that. And as soon as you realized that people had that in their head that they could actually get in on the camera, I mean, that immediately is just sort of corrupting aspect to the whole thing.
And you're so right, because it's funny. When they came down here, I did 2 of them, and one was in Bangalore, which was really packed, and it was like, you know, amazing. And then there was one in Delhi the next day, but the one in Delhi wasn't being filmed. But I had everyone like behind me, just like really ready and like all for the camera. And I was like, do you guys notice that there's no camera in the room? But so you're right, just, it's absolutely true.
They didn't film it. I didn't know they didn't know they did ones that they don't film.
So they do a tour and then they'll film some of them and then they'll just do a gig and not film some of them as well.
Okay.
At least that was what happened here.
Okay. And what about stuff like Warehouse Project? I mean, that's kind of a legendary name in the UK now. I mean, they've been doing it for, I guess, nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, Rich McGuinness from Warehouse Project has been on the show actually for a while back. They've not been without their criticism though in Manchester. Like there's a sort of, I'm not sure if this has died down a bit now, but definitely at certain points there was a feeling amongst certain people, other local promoters, that they were sort of dominating the landscape a bit too much. And like, I suppose it was an early example of like big events taking primacy over smaller clubs, basically, which is, I think, across the world, a kind of regrettable trend as I would see it. What do people think about that kind of stuff? I mean, and I suppose it's a peripheral question, big events versus clubs, because when you were talking about sound systems, that's the sort of club infrastructure that you're talking about. But the kind of festival big event thing has sat alongside that everywhere, basically. But tell me what you think about, I mean, that's a lot of broad stuff I've just thrown at you there, but that's like...
I have it all in mind. So to start with, like, for example, like Warehouse Project, it was really nice to see that they came down here and it was a similar format. They did shows with a great lineup and stuff like that. But from my understanding, and I could be wrong, I don't think the translation in terms of like tickets or the scale that it exists at was like completely justified 100% in India. Essentially saying that they had lesser numbers, I feel, compared to a Boiler Room. But then again, a Boiler Room is something that's been exposed in India for like I said, 10 years.
Yeah.
So I feel like, you know, it's this is something that is the case anywhere. Like, you know, a brand takes time, or an artist or a style of music takes time to build over time in a particular country. So I feel like only when you do things a few times and people are aware of it. It's the same thing with artists. Like, you know, maybe there's a great gig and there's a few hundred people, and the next time the artist comes, like, they're like, oh, you got to check this out. And then you kind of build that audience around whatever you're doing, you know, whether it's a warehouse project or a boiler room or whatever, or just another festival. So there's a lot of this. We have tons of festivals that are coming in here from everywhere, like, you know, whether it's a digital or it's an Awakenings and things like these larger brands. There's a lot of this that's been happening here for a long time now. But like you said, it does take a toll on the small ecosystem, which is really important to the clubs and stuff like that as well. So
absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think particularly my observation of it in Europe and in the UK has been more that like the younger audience sort of associates this music with those big events, and actually, you know, from a, you know, someone say old fart perspective, I didn't want to use that exact terminology, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like the natural habitat for me for this music is a dark room with a sound system in it. Exactly. And I refuse to accept that this is some kind of like boomer mindset. You know, I just don't think it is. I think it's just, that's reality, right? That's how it's best enjoyed. Like, exactly. But is that the same here? Is it the younger generation are of that mindset, of a similar mindset to that? Do you find is that sort of how it breaks down, or is it a little bit different?
So there's a bit of truth in it and a bit not. And I was just having a chat about this earlier today as well, that a lot of the younger generations making the effort to kind of you know, do their homework and their research, and they're more open to like intimate club experiences and things like that as well. Because like at the end of the day with the festival, yes, there's a huge market that gets attracted to the big scale of things, but also there's a certain intimacy and a certain like privacy and a certain like more realism in the club setting and that environment, and where you know that if it's like 100 people, like you're surrounded by people who are there just for the music, you know. And that's something that you may not be able to get as much at a festival experience. So I do feel that now with so much exposure, like the younger generations like making the effort to do their research, because it's easy to do research and figure out where you belong. And I feel that's good, because that kind of demarcates like, you know, further down, like where you want to kind of go. Like, you know, there's always a gateway to the scene, and then you find where you need to go from the gateway. So I hope these things help, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that gateway aspect is one which we've talked about a fair bit on the show. More specifically, actually, with the EDM boom of the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Yeah.
And that was always talked up as, well, a certain amount of these kids were going to like Derek Carter eventually, right? And exactly. That sort of happened, but I think probably not as much as people. Well, some people expected to, some people hoped.
Yeah,
I suppose. But I suppose there is the element of it. Just being, I suppose, exposed to the culture to some extent, is a positive. But I mean, it doesn't always quite work out.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, true.